Hello, welcome to lecture three on kind of organizational buying and organizational buying behavior. Before we get started, I just wanted to let you know that I want to reiterate something I put in I think in the announcements. When I embed videos, or when I create videos for you all, I use two platforms. The first is YouTube, which is super helpful. And the second, also helpful, called H5P. H5P allows me to embed questions into the videos themselves. And so when I have questions to embed into the video, you will see that on H5P. However, if there's a video and I don't have a question embedded in it, it will just, the links that you use will take you straight to the video on YouTube. No need to upload it to H5P if I'm not really using the service associated with H5P. So I hope that makes sense. So if you click a link and it goes straight to YouTube, that just essentially means that I don't have anything embedded within that lecture. So B2C marketing targets individual consumers like you or me who are interested in buying products or services for themselves rather than a corporation. Um, B2C marketing and B2C companies look at everyday individual needs, their interests, their wants, their challenges, um, impulse buying, all of these things, and kind of how can you deliver value to these consumers. On the other hand, business buying and business buyer behavior refers to the buying behavior of organizations. These organizations, like us, they buy goods and services. The difference is that they're buying them for the use of production or other services, for the use in production of other services or products that are sold, that are rented, that are supplied to other people. Um, Also included under the umbrella of business buying behavior or buyer behavior, would be retailing and wholesaling firms, that acquire goods to resell or rent to other people for profit, right? So these um, middleman, if you will, right? So when we talk about organizational buying behavior, we're not excluding the Costco or the Sam's Club, right? We're not excluding Walmart, so to speak. They too are under the pretty big tent. When we talk about business buying, though, we're talking about the decision making process by which formal organizations can establish the need to purchase products and services. And just like regular consumers, they use pretty much the same steps. They identify, they evaluate, they choose among alternative brands and suppliers. They make a purchase decision, and then they have some post purchase feelings and cognitions later on. And so we'll talk about that throughout the course of the semester. Major industries that make up the business market would be agriculture, would be fisheries, believe it or not, manufacturing, mining, communication, public utilities, banks, finance and insurance companies, and different services, right? So, you know, your insurance agent would fall under this umbrella. Your gardening person would fall under this umbrella. If you go to specialty stores, so for example, I collect Barbies. It could be that we're talking about, Walmart, if I bought Barbies from them. But it also, again, could be resellers. So it could be eBay, for example, would fall under kind of this idea of business buyer behavior, because there are plenty of people who own their own business through, eBay. So business organizations sell products, but they also buy a lot of raw materials, manufactured components, plants, equipment, supplies, business services, actual products, right? If you're Sam's Club, you're buying actual products, you're buying products from Sam, or you're getting products from Pepsi to sell to, Cassandra or Jane or whoever. According to the Census Bureau, there are over 6 million businesses in America with paid employees. That's a huge number of businesses. And if you are a marketer and you're a marketer that's focused on B2B marketing, then you want to figure out how to create and capture value, And to do that, you need to really understand these organizations, right? You need to understand their needs, you need to understand their resources, you need to understand their policies, their buying procedures. So you're going to need to know things like their objectives. You're going to need to know what their policies are, their procedures are, the structure of kind of the buyers and the decision makers, and you're going to need to know their systems, right? So this is one thing that's kind of interesting. If you are Pepsi and you're selling to Walmart, you need to know Walmart's system. Um, I lived in, so the University of Arkansas is very close to Walmart headquarters. And we actually, it's the Sam Walton School of Business. And so Walmart has an outsized effect on the school. You know, they gave a $50 million endowment, they continue to give money to the school, so on and so forth. And so, you know, you get really familiar with Walmart policies. And one policy that Walmart had, and I believe they still have, is that if you are if you do business with them and you do over a certain amount of business with them, then you must have a location in Arkansas near them. And so you saw these small buildings for Pepsi or Coke or Dorito, Frito Lay, whoever, right? Because that's one of their policies. And the other policy, of course, is that you have to be able to use Walmart's system. So pretty interesting, in my opinion. There, there are a ton of influences on business buying behavior, and this shows you quite a few of them, right? So there are environmental influences like economic development, supply conditions, right? So we know that in America and across the world, actually, there have been a lot of issues with suppliers and kind of being able to get product or services. We've seen technological change. I'll talk a little bit about technology a little bit later, but we've seen things change, right? It used to be that a lot of people went into the office. Now a lot more people use Zoom. That's going to be interesting and important to business buyers, right? You're used to going and maybe seeing the company you're trying to sell to face to face, and now they might just want to do Zoom. That leads to a level of it's not as personal, I would say, as face to face, and for some people they may struggle. um, Politics and regulatory environments, right? Regulations can be a big thing. Not to say that regulations are bad, just that if you're a company, you have to adhere to these regulations. Although, to be fair, there are companies that don't, and their fines are teeny tiny. I'm thinking about this is random, but I'm actually thinking about is it Dollar General? Yeah, I think it's like Dollar General, one of these stores. Yeah, I think it's like Dollar General. Maybe, yeah, that has been fined several thousands and thousands of dollars by Detroit because of the way they keep their business and kind of the way that they keep the litter around their stores, so on and so forth. And I think I read an article that said that this year they're going to be able to fix up their area, get rid of the litter, get rid of this kind of thing, and pay a fraction of their fine. I don't know how I feel about that, but you know, who am I? Competitive developments, right? If Apple releases a new iPhone, or if, let's say, you know, a supplier figures out a way to use technology or AI to make something cheaper, that is going to be a big deal. There are organizational objectives, policies, procedures, like I talked about in the last slide. There are also interpersonal factors, right? Authority, who can actually make these decisions, the status of the people you're talking to, their ego, empathy levels, and then persuasiveness, their persuasiveness, your persuasiveness. These things are important. It kind of reminds me, this is random, but it kind of reminds me of the Seinfeld episode. I'm sorry, not Seinfeld, the Office episode where Michael and Jan go to meet a client, a B2B client. They sell paper. And Jan tries to take them to this fancy restaurant, and Michael ends up taking them. He changes it, right? He's like, no, you can't have a good time and persuade these people at this fancy restaurant. We got to go to Chili's, right? And so they go to Chili's, and Michael is, if you've ever seen the show, you'll know that Michael was Michael, but he told some really kind of lame but kind of funny jokes. And it ended up being pretty persuasive, right? So the guy ended up saying, listen, I'll do business with you. He was empathetic. I should say that Michael was empathetic. He talked about the guy talked about his divorce, and Michael was actually a good salesman. You get to see him being a good salesman, a dorky guy, but also a good salesman. And the guy says, listen, I'm willing to buy paper from you, but you got to cut us some slack. We have some budget cuts, right? That's something going on in the organization. I'm assuming that there were some issues going on environmentally with their competitors and the company itself, Michael's company, because Jan made it very clear that if they didn't get this sale, it was going to be bad news for the company. There are also individual factors, right? The age of the people, the income, their education, their job position, all of these things, their propensity for risk and risk taking, and then of course the buyers themselves, all important. In the last slide, I talked about price, how the guy in the episode with Michael said, "Listen, I'm willing to do business with you, but you got to come down on your price." One of the main influences on business buying behavior really are economic factors such as price and service, and then these personal factors, your emotions along with it. I think price is pretty evident. Service is tricky, right? So if you are a company and you're buying Xerox printers, for example, you want to know what the service is like. I think I read something that said that Xerox is trying to float this new subscription plan where you buy the printer and then you have to pay a subscription to get service. I'm on the edge of my seat to see how this works out. I am not a huge fan of how we're turning everything into a subscription, but that's me with my old lady hat on, and that seems like that's where we're going. But if you're a company, you want to know, how much am I paying for service? How much service am I likely to need? These things they tie very, very much so into economic factors. I think the other thing that I'll say is that a lot of people try to ignore the personal factors and the interpersonal factors that go into B2B sales. And I can tell you, as someone who did B2B sales for 7 years, interpersonal factors and personal factors are very important, right? If you are the salesperson, one of the things you want to know is you want to know who your client is, right? You want to know how you approach that client. Are they prickly? Are they, affable people? Are they, the type that hates Mondays, so you should never come in on Mondays? Emotions play a huge part in B2B sales, because even though companies often look at bottom line pricing, so on and so forth, you have to realize that you're doing business with a person, right? Or a group of people. And it's very hard for most people to kind of never revert back to relying on their emotions. So we talked a minute ago about, or we've been talking about, major influences on business buying behavior, and I talked about environmental factors a few slides ago. I want to go back to that because I do think it's important. There are other environmental factors in addition to kind of the ones I named earlier. We could think about demand for product. I think I might have mentioned it to this class, but I read an article by the Dallas Fed, that talked about the fact that sausage is becoming more popular, and they show that the demand for increased demand for sausages is positively correlated with recessions. But think about that, right? We know they call the lipstick effect, right? So when we are in a recession, when money gets tight, you see the demand for lipstick go up among B2C consumers. Consumers themselves want more lipstick. And it's for women, it's because lipstick is often a very inexpensive treat for themselves when they're maybe pinching pennies on everything else. Well, if you're a B2B person and you're selling raw materials to make lipstick, whether it's dye, whatever it is, then that's a good thing for you. Economic outlook, however, might not be a great thing. We know that businesses do a lot of forecasting. What will sales be? What do we think is going to happen? We've seen some companies come back and cut their sales forecast. In fact, I think I read the other day that Dollar General cut their sales forecast. Who would have thought they'd be featured twice in a lecture by me? Not me. But they cut their sales forecast because people are buying less, right? They're saying that there's financial constraints, and I'm not sure. I'm sure they're not the only one. So we could say that people are buying more or less from dollar stores. They're buying more or less from Walmart. They're buying like yada yada. It just depends on what's going on with the economic outlook. It depends how risk averse people are, how scared they are of, let's say, a recession. Right? You think a recession is coming, you might start pinching your pennies now before the recession makes you do so, so on and so forth. The cost of money, also a big factor, right? How much does it cost to actually borrow money? So inflation is going to be huge. If you are a builder, if you are in mining, so on and so forth, you are thinking about how much does it cost to replace equipment? How much does it cost to build new buildings? So on and so forth. In addition to the cost, we have to think about resource availability, right? You might really want to build, 8 new facilities, but if what you need, the concrete, if the wood, if the bolt, whatever you need, aren't available, then that's going to be difficult. Technology has upended B2B sales as well as many other sales. I talked about systems earlier. If you're a B2B salesperson, you need to know a company's system. Companies can change their system. Although some companies are very slow to do so, some are very quick because they know that kind of doing so increases things like data privacy. They know that doing so kind of could give them an edge in the market, right? So if Walmart is changing their system and updating their system, you need to know said system. Culture can play a role, right? We know that when things become popular, everybody buys them. So we can think of something like, are they Stanley cups? I can't remember, whatever the name of the cups are that have been pretty popular, the ones that you use to keep your drinks cold. So I think Stanley cups have become pretty popular. If you are a supplier of Stanley cups, you are absolutely happy with that because that means that you're selling more of the raw materials made to make those cups. On the other hand, there's been a new trend. Another example, a new trend. They call them Sephora girls. Apparently, a lot of young girls are buying makeup and skincare and these kind of things from Sephora. I just read an article about how some this is not funny, sorry. Some young girls are using anti-aging products because they're scared of looking older. And they're doing it at ages like 13, 14, 15. I'm confused. I shop at Sephora sometimes. Sephora is extremely expensive, so I don't know kind of why they're buying such expensive skincare. But two, those products are not meant for very young girls. And the article that I read talked about a little girl whose face ended up being horrifically impacted by using these products. And so it's terrible for these girls. On the other hand, if you are Lush doesn't sell at Sephora, but if you're Fenty, or you are, why can't I think of anybody? If you're not L'Oreal, because they don't sell there either. If you're just one of these companies, off the top of my head, I can't think of any other than Fenty. But if you're one of these companies, then of course, you may be happy to know that you get a bigger audience. Hopefully social responsibility and your own sense of responsibility would push you to do something about this. Politics can play a role in business buying behavior. If you think that the new administration or the current administration is more favorable to your business, that can change how you do business, and how people do business with you. And then of course competition, right? If your competition undercuts you on price, if they undercut you on service, if they just do a better job being persuasive, those things are going to have an impact on you as a business. Interpersonal factors also have quite a bit of influence on B2B buying behavior. In this class, interestingly enough, we will focus quite a bit on interpersonal factors. We'll talk a bit about motives. We'll talk about perceptions, preferences, attitude towards risk. We will talk about age, income, and education. Those are more demographic issues, and so they won't get as much attention. But the one thing that I wanted you to take away from this slide is this. This class is about consumer and industrial buying behavior, and you will notice that there's some overlap, and in fact, quite a bit of overlap between the two because at the end of the day, business buying behavior typically relies on people, and so interpersonal factors play a big role in how people make decisions.